Good evening, folks. Those joining us here in the chamber and also those streaming wherever you may be. I call the meeting to order, and as always, we do at Wodonga Council acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of the country. We do acknowledge them as traditional owners and custodians across various lands, and we pay our deepest respect to their ancestors, elders, children and young people. We also acknowledge the strength and resilience of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and recognise their continuous connections to lands, waters and communities across the country. I'd also like to, before I move on to apologies, acknowledge Matthew Hyde, Wodonga Council's new CEO, joining us for the first meeting. He's going to have all the answers tonight. I do say that in jest. We've got leaves of absence that were previously granted for Councillor Danny Lowe and Councillor Olga Quilty, both absent for this meeting. I believe there's no declarations under the Act CEO, and also councillors' conflicts of interest. Haven't received any prior warnings, so I'm going to say there was none. Thank you. Item 6, councillors, the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting, 27th of June. They've been circulated. Somebody happy to move that they're correct? Thanks, Councillor Hall. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Watson. I'll take. No one wishing to speak against. Minutes are carried. Item 7 is the delegates' report. Councillors, I bring to your attention, circulated and published in the public agenda was the actual National Local Government Association conference held in Canberra. In that same week, Councillor Simpfendorfer and myself also represented council at the Municipal Association of Victoria State Conference, where Wodonga Council did have 3 motions there for debate at state level. So hoping to take care of both of those in the one item of business. Councillor Simpfendorfer, you're happy to move. Did you just want to read out your, have you got your words there in front of you?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. That item 7, the 2 points now. Point 1, that the report from the Mayor, Councillor Kevin Poulton and Deputy Mayor Councillor Graham Simpfendorfer on the 2022 National General Assembly of Local Government be received and noted. And point 2, which is the addition, the report from Mayor Councillor Kevin Poulton and Deputy Mayor Councillor Graham Simpfendorfer on the 2022 Municipal Association of Victoria State Conference be received and noted. That'll be the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer, did you want to speak to, just briefly, in both of those reports, particularly, I guess, the MAV one?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I think the National General Assembly was quite a detailed report in that, and I hope everyone got a chance to read it, but it was good to share that experience to get down there. I didn't get that chance to go last time, so it was great to see other mayors and deputy mayors from around the country there, and certainly some highlights there was the presentation from Mr Stan Grant, and meeting the Ambassador of the Ukraine was some great information there, so very poignant for us, being obviously with our Bongilla Migrant Centre and the issues of refugees that we now face. So it was a really good experience, but also this additional report to the MAV conference, and probably more importantly for us from our context, those motions that we put forward. All 3 motions where we did go through, I think at a rate of support rate very high, almost unanimous. And other than that, it was quite a lengthy meeting. Thankfully, a lot of the motions got rolled up, and then I think there was the issue around our voting, which I think we spoke about and moved as a resolution to be one vote per council was what was passed. It was quite topical, but the one vote was what got across the line. And then finally, there'll be a special meeting of State Council for the 16th of September, which will attend to that as well. Probably the best summary, but all of it's in front of you. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, did you want to say anything in seconding?
No, well, only one thing very briefly, Mr Mayor. It's very pleasing that we are now attending, or have been attending these organisations and being part of it. So, no, I think it's a good thing.
Do you want to wish to speak against? Nothing further. I'll carry that one unanimously. Thank you. Items 8. 8.1 is the review of the governance rules. Councillors, I'll draw to your attention, obviously, the update we received since the agenda was officially published. That update that we received was also then published publicly and has also been circulated in the hard copies tonight as well, as per the update. And really, it was just as identified by the Deputy CEO at the time around the mayoral election, the template and the process of doing that. Was somebody happy to move? Thanks, councillor Watson. As per the recommendation, just a nod, yeah? Yep, seconder, councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This will now be going out for 21 days public viewing and reporting. So a future report will come back to council with that material if people do put presentations in or submissions. And a lot of the changes in the rules are due to the local government new what do you call it? The Act. Thank you, Mr Mayor. The new Act. So it's really falling in line with all those things that we've got to abide by and follow, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Probably only really briefly. It is quite voluminous, and it will come back to us for a decision, but it's in line with the Minister of Local Government's good practice guidelines and also that advice from Maddox. So it's a pretty solid document that will come back to us once it goes out on public exhibition. Thank you.
Councillor Mildred.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the document going out for public consultation. There's a couple of mostly minor discrepancies. I think we've actually worked through this quite thoroughly, and I think we've picked up a number of things that reflect our way of seeing the world. And I think this document is much more than just complying with what the Act says and what the Minister's directions say. This is the set of rules with which we operate and function, and I think we've done a pretty fair job of putting this together. However, there's a couple of things that I'll just throw up there. One of them is Rule 24.3 implies that a notice of motion can only be moved by the councillor, a councillor that signed it, but then that gets contradicted in 24.8, which provides that any councillor may move the motion. The second point that I have a few concerns about, which I think will probably be a point of conversation when this comes back to council, is the speaking times that are proposed to be changed in this document, reducing the amount of speaking time for a councillor. The other thing is when this is possibly something that appears quite regularly, but when we when we suspend standing orders, the clause that we have says that you cannot take a motion whilst standing orders are suspended. But at the same time, a subsequent rule says that a motion is to be moved to resume standing orders. So there's an inherent conflict in that. And I'm suggesting that at some point when this comes back to us, we probably should say in the premise to 80.3, we probably should say, except for a motion to resume standing orders, and then continue with what's already written.
Councillor Mildred, that's time. Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Mildred. Councillor Hall.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Ironically, that's what I'm going to talk about. Look, I support this going out to the public because I always look forward to constructive feedback, and so that's important. But there are a couple of rules that I don't see really need a change. One of them is the time councillors are allowed to speak when speaking to a motion they put forward or want to speak to. I don't see the need to shorten the time frame. Mostly councillors do try to speak to a motion as quickly as they can to get their position heard. Sometimes there is a need to speak longer, especially when it is the council believes in the public interest. The time changed to time frames is cut by 2 minutes for the mover of a motion and 1 minute to councillor who wants to speak to the motion put forward. The new governance rules does allow for a mover of the motion to ask the chair if they could extend the time for them to speak, but then why change the time frame? And, you know, look, that can be used for political reasons, and that sort of is a bit concerning sometimes. Our meetings will have a free 3-hour time limit with a possibility to extend by half an hour. We rarely go over that time frame, have gone over that time frame in the past, so I don't see the need to change the existing policy around this now. But as I said, I will support the document being placed on public exhibition and look forward to constructive feedback that we may receive in the report that will come back to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. In closing, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It will be good to go out to public consultation and across the state, you know, with the issues that have been raised tonight by my fellow councillors. I'm sure that will get back to the local government minister, and also there are opportunities in the future to change things if it's not working completely. So I look forward to the community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.2 is our community grants and policy and guidelines, councillors. There is a recommendation there before you. Is anyone prepared? Councillor Watson's prepared to move that one. Anyone seconding? As per recommendation, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. There were some discussions, and I gather we are going with option 2 on this one, which within the report, is that we will review it again during the next budget period, which will be really good. And once again, that gives community to have a bit of a talk and a bit of a say about what's there. But I think it's a worthwhile thing, these community grants for our community, because they work hard, and it's very much providing opportunities for organisations to do things in our community, which they might well have not been able to do without some extra additional cash or grants. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Simpfendorfer. Reserving the right, councillors. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll try and do it in time. It seems that Vago's presumption is that council officers and or community members are not more trustworthy in determining grant applications than elected councillors. Irrespective, it's my opinion that rates are paid to council as a fee for service, not as a tax. That may change, but at the moment, that's the way I think it is. And therefore, ratepayers' money should not be used for transfer payments. If council is to have a grants program, then it should only relate to and apply to community groups using or managing or providing a direct contribution to council-owned or controlled land, such as public spaces or recreation facilities. I do not support giving ratepayers' money to charities, not-for-profit organisations, clubs or associations that have no connection to management and or capital improvement of council assets for which rates are paid to the council. I understand why we're putting this in place to reflect the recommendations of VAGO. I think there's an element of bureaucracy that's crept into this, and I don't think that's really appropriate. I think the elected representative should be taking a lot more responsibility for what goes on and face the electorate if we get it wrong. So I accept that we need to have a policy, given that we've got stuff in the budget for this time round. And from that point of view, I'll support this motion, but I do not support the policy as a broad-scale program going forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
20 seconds up your sleeve, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Mildren in regards to supporting the motion put forward, or the recommendation put forward. This report has come back to council due to our current policy and guidelines not being in line with VAGO's recommendations regarding good governance, i.e. recommendations relating to fraud and control management. Key recommendations were strengthening fraud controls, improving conflicts of interest processes, improving guidance and training for those assessing or approving grants, improving transparency, and excluding councillors from assessing and making recommendations on grant applications. I have no issue with incorporating these key recommendations. I might add that mostly councillors, if they saw they had a conflict of interest, always put their hand up and stood out from any decision on that. So that's nothing new to us. We've always adhered to that. as I said, I have absolutely no issue incorporating these key recommendations in our policy. What I do support is a review of where it all sits and whether all grants submissions are reviewed as part of the budget process annually. So when we do our budget, all of these submissions come to us and you know, we look at them as whether, you know, their affordability or whether they do fit the criteria that the policy council has in place. So I will be supporting what is recommended because we have already approved of the funding in the budget 2022-23, so, or 24, sorry. So yes, but I do look forward to the review at the next budget workshops. Thank you.
Spot on, 2 minutes, Councillor Hall. Thank you very much. You reserved your right, Councillor Simpfendorfer? No, nothing more. Councillor Watson in closing.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We do have an independent group that assess the grant submissions when they do come in and follow the policy that we as councillors have put in place. So I look forward for this to come back at the budget period, but it's a very well worthwhile thing for our community. Such things as St John's Ambulance and the Wodonga Band Hall, I think at times have had grants, and it's just a great thing for communities that are building in their areas and sporting clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.2 is the June 2022 Quarterly Finance Report. There is the recommendation there before you, councillors. Is somebody prepared to move a motion? As per recommendation, Councillor Hall. Thank you. Have we got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Hall.
Look, I have really nothing to add, but I was wondering whether our Officer Officer Klein would just like to make a quick commentary on the quarterly finance report for us.
Through you, Mr Mayor. This is just the final quarterly report for the 21-22 financial year. So operations were fairly standard through that report. The main change as far as a budget variation goes is the federal government through the state government prepaid 75% of the 2022-2023 financial assistance grant. So that's actually physically hit our bank account in April. So, and we received another grant that has been paid into our account during that last quarter as well. So budget variations are just picking up those two grants that have hit the account, for which we've actually updated the opening cash balance when we adopted the budget at the June meeting. So this is just making sure we're accounting for those. Thank you.
Councillor Simpfendorfer? No. Councillors? Councillor Mildren?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Broadly, I think this report's well presented, but there's one thing that amused me when I saw it in the report, and it's interesting how things change so very, very quickly. In a not too distant past, we were talking about stimulating our economy. Today, we have inflation rates that are driving things, making things quite difficult. And I note that in the report that we refer to projects being desperately needed, economic stimulus to occur in our local economy. I think there's probably moved on from that, and the economic stimulus might now not be the main reason for it. Nonetheless, the projects are still things that we should be doing in our community to deliver the infrastructure that we've adopted for delivery. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Watson? No, you don't have to. You do, yeah? You're the only one that hasn't, so you're right. Councillor Hall, anything in closing? No? I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.4 is the financial plan for 2022-2023 to 2031 to 2032. Hopefully we're all still here for that one. Councillors, a recommendation there in the report. Happy to move as per recommendation. Councillor Watson, seconder. Councillor Hall. Thanks, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The financial side of things is probably not my strongest suit. However, in saying that, these plans to reflect through to 2032 is just ideal for us planning our city and where is going to be taking us. So that can change during that time period, but at least it gives some direction and some timings on projects and what we need to do for our city. It reflects best practice, what we're doing in local government. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Hall?
Yes. This is our council 10-year financial plan, and it was adopted at the last council meeting. This is an update to that plan, and the one thing I will mention that was in this report is the proposed $4 million of borrowings that was scheduled for our 2022-23 budget will now be reduced to 24. It'll be 2022 20. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, will be now next year's budget will be reduced to 2.5 million and may only be used for potential bridging finance purposes. This is due to a result of higher land sales revenue, which is a fantastic result and puts us the council, in a really good financial position. Council and staff have worked hard to achieve the best outcomes for our community, and I think have come a long way in achieving this position to where we were some years ago. So I'm really very proud and happy that we have such a we're able to borrow less, we're making good land sales, and our finances are all in check. So, and we're able to offer under cap rate rises. What better position can we be in? It's good.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. In closing, Councillor Watson? Nothing more? Okay, I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.5 is the Internal Audit Charter. Councillors, there is a recommendation there to adopt. Councillor Mildren, happy to move? Yep. Seconder? Councillor Simpfendorfer, thank you. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I channel Councillor Quilty in moving this motion. This is her bailiwick, as much as I'm going to be playing second fiddle into the future. I think this is a document that we should be continuously reviewing and renewing as we find things and uncover different things and learn things. So for this point in time, move the motion, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Simpfendorfer? No, nothing further. All right, put the motion. Yep, all in favour. Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 8.6, the proposed park names. I know Councillor Hall, with you being on the place naming committee, you're happy to move as per the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Watson, thank you. Councillor Hall.
Okay, the names of these three parks will go out to the public for feedback if this recommendation put forward tonight is supported. Each of the parks' names have been put forward, have been endorsed by the Wodonga Place Names and Advisory Committee, to which I am one of the members. This committee is a group of diverse and well-informed people who go through the process of each name that is put forward to council with plenty of consideration and background knowledge. The many rules and regulations, there's quite a substantial amount of rules and regulations that on what names can be used. So I have confidence in what has been put forward by the advisory committee tonight, and so yeah, I support the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, it's probably a little bit of a history lesson here, and look, I congratulate the Place Names Committee because they do a fabulous job, and they're independent apart from our Councillor Hall. But two of the names that are going out for public comment worked in the old sale yards, which was where Target is, or across the road from Elgin's, and they walked around those. Or one was in the cook room, and one walked around as a superintendent. So a fantastic legacy to give our city of the past history, because we've had a number of sale yards in our city now, and at least these names will be remembered in history.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpendorfer.
Just really quickly, Mr Mayor, just something that caught my attention when I read it as well, that for the public feedback, must be within 28 days after the publication of the notice. So at the time, the clock will be ticking. So if anyone does have any feedback, you've got 28 days once it goes out.
Thank you, councillor Simpfendorfer. Anything in closing, councillor Hall? No? Okay, I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And just a reminder again, as last month, makewodongayours.com.au for all these things that are being thrown out for public feedback. So make sure you're getting on top of that. Item 8.7 is the response to the petition that we had last month, the second entry exit for Riverside Estate. Killara, councillors looking for a motion. Councillor Mildren, or question, or moving to suspend standing orders for the purpose of? For the discussion and debate of this important issue. Do we have a seconder? For debate purposes? Okay, so suspending standing orders. All those in favour? All those against? All right. Looking for a motion, councillors? As per recommendation, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Watson, thank you. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I understand that the intent for trying to discuss this matter outside standing orders, but look, I think it's quite clear here in the reply and understandably that everyone needs to be advised accordingly, and quite a detailed response will go out. And, as recent as today, I've also been contacted by other members of the Killara area that understand our position and understand it all in entirety. So I think this is a good way of seeing how the process works, that a petition's come in, it's been reviewed, it's been replied to. So I'm happy to support the recommendation as it is, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson, nothing to say or reserving your right? Which one?
I can reserve my right, but nothing to say at this point.
Thank you, councillors. How much time are you requesting, Councillor Mildren? 5 minutes. I'll go with the councillors as to whether they're happy to grant 5 minutes. Yep. Go for it, Councillor Mildren. We're starting the stopwatch.
To avoid getting in trouble, I'll read this because this is an issue that could generate issues. The response in the report, in my opinion, does not go far enough to address the specific issues raised and sought to be addressed by the petitioners. Whilst I understand and acknowledge that the planning history of the Riverside Estate is very complex and has been the subject of numerous issues and differences in matters of interpretation over the years, I believe we should more specifically address the concerns raised rather than take the shielding cover of a complex history and the more recent difficulties in getting Regional Roads Victoria to an agreement. I believe Council can, in the circumstances, take a far more active role in the process of reaching agreement between the various parties required to see the second access built. Indeed, in my opinion, this is an advocacy matter that Council should be taking a lead role. The issue of Whites Road is a moot point as changes for whatever reasons since the original estate approvals have been made have resulted in the access via Whites Road not being allowed. Therefore, the Section 173 agreement in that regard is essentially redundant or at least inoperable. Therefore, an alternative solution is necessary, and it is my opinion that Council should take the lead role in advocacy to find that solution between the developer and Vic Roads or Regional Roads Victoria. Whilst technically the second entry exit obligation on the developer may not be triggered, the relevant clauses of the Section 173 agreement seem to have been made inoperable, perhaps in part as a consequence of council objectives and changes to access onto Whites Road. It appears that the originally envisaged number of lots may well have been reached or near to being reached, and the second entry needed, but due to the technical Whites Road accessibility is not triggered, then the alternative access egress is not needed as it's shown. So in essence, what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is this is complex, yes, but we need to take a lead role because this is a genuine advocacy thing that we should be out in front about, and we should be trying to force the issue far more than what we have been. The fact that the access to Whites Road has been, I'll say, not permitted or not allowed post the original approvals process we've had to have had some level of input into that process and some level of decision-making to create that outcome, which, in my observation, gives some liability to council to be more proactive in reaching the solutions. Now, I believe the number of lots that have been created would have already been lots that should have been accessing Whites Road, and in that context, there is reasonable point to say that we should be creating the second access. The Whites Road roundabout, as I said, is inoperable because we aren't going to ever have access from this estate to Whites Road. So therefore that intersection and that clause in the documentation is essentially irrelevant. So from my point of view, this motion that's before us doesn't take this anywhere near as far as it should, and it doesn't actually address the things that have been requested in the petition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. 3 minutes 40 for next time. Councillor Hall.
Look, I don't have a lot to add to that. It's just I did write something here, but I am not a planning or road traffic expert, so I'll admit that. But I do personally believe Killara Estate does need to have a second entry exit road to the estate, and has needed one for some time now. That's my view. While council officers have advised that the 200 lot trigger has not been reached, anyone who lives and visits the estate can see the issues that having only one entry can cause, and especially the anxiety some of the residents feel during our bushfire seasons. You know, that bad year that we had, there were fires all around, and it really concerned me that the residents were that, you know, they will put at a lot of risk, I believe. So, I mean, it might not come around very often, but it's enough to cause, issue for the people. And I think we do need to, as the officer recommendation supports, that we continue to look and try and find answers for the residents, but it hasn't provided any answers. And I think what Councillor Mildren's put forward tonight, I'm in agreement. I think we need to work harder with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'm going to enter this conversation. Can you start the stopwatch for me, please, Mr. CEO? Only because it is a very complex matter, as Councillor Mildren has officially and articulated quite well. It's complex, it's inherited, and I guess it highlights that things change over a period of time. My thoughts and concerns are certainly of how inconvenient it is for some Killara residents and where they might be concerned, but I also take stock of the fact that anything outside of this sets a precedent, essentially, potentially, on every single development that happens in this city as to what council's role is. And I think the report before us and the response to the petition is actually very clear. There's been a lot of residents within Killara and that may access other parts of the city through there that have all been a little bit concerned over the years and have spoken to councillors, not just me, all councillors, and have all shared their thoughts and feelings. And we know that the second there's a second entry available, then we can fix some of the maintenance issues that we know are the problem with the first entry and exit. So it's very complex. I guess the thing that I look for in this is, are we doing what council should do in this role in this present day? For me, yes, that's my satisfaction that we are. Should we ensure that every decision we make as a council from here on in doesn't land whoever it might be sitting in this room in 15 or 20 years from now in the exact same position? My oath, we should be. But outside of that, I will be supporting the motion as per the recommendation. Thank you. Councillor Watson, you had reserved your right. Did you want to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I think your summary is ideal, so I don't need to add any further comment.
Thank you. And in closing, Councillor Simpfendorfer?
Just to reiterate, I guess, what your comments were. I agree. I think that Killara, it would be great to have that second entry exit, and it's quite obvious to us how it is, but it is complex, and there is certain barriers in legislation that's doing that. And at point 3 on the recommendation, I've got every confidence that our council will continue to advocate. I take the points of the other councillors, they want a more rigorous, I guess, step forward, and I'm confident that with the staff we have with it, we'll continue to try and do that, to try and reach a resolution that can help. But I agree, it's really dangerous to set a precedent here that we come back to bite council a bit later down the track. So I'm happy to move the recommendation as it is, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Carried 5-2. Thank you very much. On to item 8.8, the response to the other petition we had last month. So turnaround times are good. Caravans and parked cars in residential streets. There's a recommendation there for you, councillors. Anybody prepared to move a motion? As per recommendation, thank you, Councillor Watson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simpfendorfer, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think that at times in our streets and things like that, it is frustrating, I think, for some residents that either work vans or caravans or whatever might be parked there. The response in the recommendation is endorsing our council officers to do checks and whenever we have a complaint come in. So I think it's a very, very hard issue with parked vehicles in local community streets, but I think we're following the guidelines of what we've got, and that's what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer. No, reserved. Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yes, I did some research on the laws around this issue and highlighted in the petition everything in the report about the local laws from what I found were correct. I totally understand the issues that have been highlighted in the petition and understand the angst that caused some people in the street where this is happening. Other than what has been put forward by the officer's recommendation and that it is to undertake ongoing random inspections to ensure that neither road safety rules 2017 nor environmental and community protection laws are being transgressed, there's not a lot that councillors can really do. I do personally believe that some of the residential roads in the newer estates in Wodonga are too narrow, and I feel that it's my view that we probably need to have a look at those issues that were, about the narrowness of the streets, in the petition. But other than that, it's not a lot we can do, and I support the recommendation that's put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren, yeah?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I commend the officers for the thoroughness on the way this report's been put together, or more importantly than the report, the way the matter's been investigated. These sorts of issues are really difficult, and they've been difficult for a long time in local government. We have a set of rules that can't cover every single incident. We have a whole range of different changing attitudes and views and lifestyle things within our communities, and caravanning has become popular again. It's really difficult if somebody is complying to the letter of the law but is upsetting the neighbours. That is awfully hard to deal with, and we have to apply the law the way it stands, our law, our local laws, and any state laws that we're responsible for implementing. So the way the officers have gone about this, they've looked at this through the eyes of what can be done, what should be done, and I think what we've got in the recommendation is the best we can achieve. It may well be that at some point we need to review our environment local law to consider whether or not we have an opportunity to deal with these things in a different manner. I support the concept of the staff continuing to keep an eye on things to make sure that we don't get unsightly outcomes. Despite, you might only have one caravan, but if it's left in an unsightly manner, well, then that becomes another issue. So I think from the point of view of what's been done, I don't see that we can do an awful lot more. But I note and highlight the fact that Council is proposing to continue to keep an eye on the matter. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Simpfendorf, you'd reserved? No. In closing, Councillor Watson? No. Therefore, put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Reports for noting. There's nothing there at item 9. Item 10, the reports for information. As usual, councillors, I'll rattle through these. Just jump in and yell at me if you want to bring something to anyone's attention. 10.1 is the planning report for June. 10.2 is the building report. The competitive services report at 10.3. The lobbying advocacy meetings and events for June are there with councillor attendance included at 10.4. The 2 cities, 1 community update at 10.5. The councillor meetings at 10.6 and the decisions register at 10.7. Okay, item 11 is the notices of motion, of which there's none. Petitions at item 12, there's none. Council seal, there's none. Item 13. 14 is general business, councillors. Any general business? Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a sombre note. I wish to make a brief recognition of the passing of Paul Lovell. He's made a fairly substantial contribution over the years to teaching young kids music in our community. And I think, although he probably hasn't been teaching for some little while, he's been unwell, we should just recognise the fact that he's been a solid contributor to our community. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Well said. Thanks, Councillor Mildren. Any other general business? No. We move on to item 15, urgent business, which has none. Question time at question 16. We have one question. Great. Our new CEO is going to earn his keep tonight. I've just told him what the usual tradition is here, so away you go.
Yep, right. Can the responsible authority please inform the ratepayers when they're going to resource planning compliance so they can address multi-contentious matters? Please refer the email from Mr. Leon Schultz, dated the 6th of July 2022. May I suggest this could be done not through an additional budget, but could be done by reallocating existing resources.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and that was from Mr. Chris Phillips in Killara, and I know Officer Schultz, I believe you're happy to deal with this now as a response on the night, or are we taking that on notice? Take on notice, thank you very much, so we'll get a response sorted for that. No other questions submitted this evening, councillors, so we move on to confidential business. The recommendation that we close the meeting off. Somebody happy to move that one? Thank you, Councillor Watson. And Councillor Simfordorfer as a seconder. Does anyone wish to speak against meeting closed to public? Thanks very much, media and attendees. All right, welcome back. Thanks very much. Item 19.2, we adopted the in-camera recommendation. Somebody prepared to move? Thank you, councillor Hall. Seconder, councillor Simpfendorfer. Anyone speaking against? No, carried unanimously, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 8:01.